guy that they can sort of play down with Tam or whatever. He's on the young DP contract right now, but had he been a bit older, they could have done it with Tam maybe and got him in there now, especially if there's so much more creative kids out there. That's the negative of it, but there's a lot of positives in terms of what it's going to make these overall teams look like. And so all in all, I applaud that, although I would just like them to again go back to the point of just make the salary cap bigger. But
yeah, well, if you make the salary cap bigger, you can't decide where you want those teams to invest. By doing this this way, you actually dictate to the teams, look, we know you work on your DPs, we work on your academy players and your homegrowns. Now it's the gap in the middle we want to help you with. That's where we're giving you a little bit more targeted allocated money so that the product on the field could represent what the league is doing outside, where you see constant growth, and they want the product on the field to represent that. Because one thing that Don Garber mentioned in the press conference and went maybe a little under the radar is he mentioned the growth and how the business is doing better and records everywhere. But he wanted the product on the field to follow suit. He wanted the product on the field to be one of the reasons people talk about this league. And as of right now, it's still not the main. He wants that to change.
Yeah, no, precisely. It's still, there are a lot of elements of the marketing soccer league with MLS still, right? Even what they're doing with targeted allocation is a bit about that. They don't want, well, what they want to do is they want to control their teams a little bit to make sure that they don't, if they gave them $8 million in the cap, as you said, think about had you given $1 million back in the early days to spend on TFC, well, Dan Gargan would be a rich man type thing, right? Yeah. That's what would, and no offense to Dan Gargan, but that's kind of the what they want to avoid is kind of just giving a lot of more, just couple $100,000 more to journeymen. They'd rather give $500,000 to 3 or 4 more players is what they want to do. The last frontier, and Montreal came close, but even when Montreal came close, I don't know how close they really were in that second half against Club America. We were talking about that a minute ago.
Yes.
And once America got rolling in that game.
How much was America dealing with the home and away situation and knowing when to open the valves?
Yeah. Once that gap of quality became pretty apparent pretty quickly in the second half of that game. And that's taking nothing away from what the Impact did in that, to be clear. But nonetheless.
Speaking of Club America, they're actually right now in Japan for the Club World Cup that's starting. And it stung a little. I saw them there again. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it brings me back to more than a year and a half ago where it got close, but not that close.
How would that have worked if the Impact won? Up to last weekend, I bet.
Oh, can you imagine if you, well, it would have been last year, but imagine if you're in this, you win the CONCACAF Champions League and you go deep in the MLS Cup playoff the same year. You go to the MLS Cup.
Something's never came up. Yeah, I guess you just go straight into it, but yeah.
Something's got to give. But you just tire FIFA Club World Cup. That's not happening.
For the Major League Soccer team?
No. So
it's there for Barcelona, not for.
So knowing that's a possibility,
Real Madrid this year,
you have to adjust the schedule of the playoffs. You have to maybe have it like Tuesday MLS Cup.
Well, they did that. Well, they did that with the Grey Cup and the TFC Montreal. That's why it was midweek. For those who don't know, it's because they moved it to part for the time because, well, we're going to tell Toronto's being arrogant because they think they're going to be in the, well, they were. So there you go. Look, that is the last frontier to get back to my Mexican teams to be the best league in North America, one of the best teams in the world by 2022. That's a financial statement, not an on the field statement. They've got to become the best team in CONCACAF. Best team among the best leagues in the world, right? And you're going to need to spend more money on the squad to do that. Targeted allocation is the way to do it. I mean, spending money, this is the thing. Again, not to go back to my little Twitter spat this morning, but it's actually a sore point for me. It's like spend money to win. How
it's not spend all their money takes away from the game when you don't come from a. Because it has to be organic. People love the idea of, look, the team went from nothing and they build it all up organically. Took time. That's one way to do it. Mm-hmm. But in 2016 or in the present day of sports, when you come into something with more money, with more budget, there's a chance. It's the Chelsea, cities of this world. You do get a chance to take that money. It's not a guaranteed success anyways, even if you spend that money, but it does help you get closer faster.
Leicester won the title last year, but
Leicester spent money a year and a half ago for that.
And they're not poor either. Yeah,
they were poor. They're not since 2014.
Yeah, exactly. You need an investment at some point. And
you're absolutely right. The people love the Leicester idea. Look what he created. Leicester's closer to Toronto FC story than it is to Wimbledon in the 90s.
Yeah, well, yeah, Leicester's much richer than TFC.
Yeah,
So
especially now.
Yeah, in the global context, they're a very wealthy club. So, alas, at any rate, no. To get back to Major League Soccer, it is an interesting juxtaposition, this MLS Cup final versus last MLS Cup final, in the sense that you had two kind of Moneyball teams in the last year's final in terms of Portland and Columbus, and then this year, as I said, I believe they're 1-3, and LA is in between as the number 2 salary in the league. I have a feeling that the trend is going to go more forward.
Well, it's funny though, because it's been a topic all around the week. Conversation I had with fellow journalists in the last few nights, Duane. It's all about how you build the team. It's you mentioned the money ball. The money ball aspect of soccer, of Major League Soccer, the way roster is built, the rules and everything, it takes some time, but eventually you get a wise guy in there somewhere that finds a way to maximize all of those rules, to find loopholes, quote unquote, or more understand what you can and can't do, what you can spend, where you can spend it, saving monies on signing young players at the right time. They bring you something. It's a combination of all of that TFC, Seattle, Montreal to a smaller extent. But if you look at Montreal, the players that were producing for them, the Mancosu is not paid like Piatti, and he's not paid like Drogba, but he got the value there. They were able to build better midfield with Bernadello, and that was because of depth. You do see depth and that importance of building your roster being almost as important as your DPs, because they have to mesh together, and more than that, they have to contribute at the right time.
Yeah, but look, people that say Toronto's, if Toronto does win this title, well, they won the Eastern Conference title, so let's say they bought the Eastern Conference. We'll leave it at that for today until we know what happens today. People that say they bought that, okay, fine, but Toronto FC has been rich since 2007.
They've been rich before the league.
Yeah, they were rich and incompetent with the old management. They brought Tim Bezbatchenko in. They brought Bill Manning in, and that changed the culture of the team. And now they're rich and smart, and that's a deadlier combination.
You mentioned Tim Bezbatchenko. I want to go there for a second. How important was Tim Leiweke coming in here before Bill Manning? Because if you want to give credit where credit is due, the turnaround of TSC was started when Leiweke was the end of Leiweke's reign.
Yeah, no, for sure. Leiweke is a bit divisive within the supporters culture in Toronto because he's a bit of a slick guy. He's a corporate guy and kind of talks out of two sides of his mouth when he's talking to the supporters. But if you look at it objectively, yeah, the bloody big deal was a bloody big mess. No doubt about that. But
it laid the foundation for the other bloody big deal,
which is today, right? This is the bloody big deal.
The last 2 years. It's like the last 2 years, literally.
Well, ending with today with the championship game here.
15 and 16.
But even, look, it's a combination of two. Leiweke is the bravado that came in at a time. If you go back to the end of 2013, and I cannot stress enough how low TFC was at the end of 2013.
The season when they're starting 0-9 and struggled throughout the season, and it finished in 2013 with Ryan Nelson leaving and the whole debacle.
Yeah, look. Back-to-backs 2012, 2013. That 2-year stretch is the worst 2-year stretch in the history of Major League Soccer by any team. There has never been a team that has finished with less than 30 points in back-to-back season in Major League Soccer history other than Toronto in 2012 and 2013. They were as low as you can get. Leiweke comes in at that point, takes a team that they were never going to fold or anything in that, but they were irrelevant outside of the Loyalists.
Floundering.
Yeah, sure. They were absolutely floundering. They were irrelevant outside of, U Sector Red Patch Boy.
They were relevant outside of Exhibition Place.
Yeah, like the 1,000 or so loyalists that have been there since year one. I actually on the show, the special show I did on Thursday, I talked to Rudy Schuler, touched on it. It was the fact that people were still angry showed that there was still that people cared still, but outside of the people that were angry, which was probably, let's be liberal and say 5,000. The club was nothing. It was just something to do on a summer day. People were still going to buy their tickets. They were still going to go. The club would have just sort of did its thing for a while. And eventually even the loyalists would have probably got bored, started families, whatever, and moved away. However, when Leiweke comes in, he comes in with that bravado and he says, no, this is MLSE. This is the richest team in the league. We have all this fan history, not necessarily success on the pitch, but there's always been fans in TFC Stadium. We've always had sort of success off the pitch. We've got to do something big. He comes in, he puts a damn buses out front of Real Sports, and he brings in Jermaine Defoe, brings in Michael Bradley, which was almost an accident at the time that Bradley kind of just fell in their laps, to be honest. But nonetheless, gets those.
It's the way it happened, the player agent and that conversation of, well, if you want to do something special, we have that guy too. Oh, what? Let me make a phone call.
Yeah.
Bezpachenko calling the higher ups. MLS. I have the opportunity to do this. Can I get the funds? We'll find a way to make it work with the salary cap. Is it possible? He waits a couple of hours, gets another phone call. Yes, you can. Boom, done. But it was a surprise.
Yeah. And I think that is what Lewicki did the best, because Lewicki worked the boardroom and was able to convince probably what were reluctant MLSC board of director people at the time to continue to invest in a soccer team that they probably looked at and goes, okay, you know what? We're getting the 14,000, 15,000 that we need to break even on this team. They're going to show up. We might get lucky a couple of years down the road and have some ebbs and flows, but we don't need to invest a lot. He convinced them of what the potential in the market again. And I think that has been the key. And that's what's led them to today, to getting Giovinco, to getting, making the deal to get Altidore. But the combination, as I said, Bezpachenko plays as massive a role to understand that Josie was a player that was an asset that could go and get, using Defoe so that it wasn't a complete waste, and also taking a risk on a guy, taking a chance on a guy that had been doing pretty poorly. He was floundering too.
But his upside and the value he had, what he cost compared to what he brought, is really there. Look at the performance he had the last 5 games. But because of his performance with Sunderland, that was not good at all. What's 1 goal in a few games?
Yeah, it was awful.
Awful.
Yeah. The Sunderland people, that's, they look at it and they just shake their head. They go, how bad's MLS if he's doing here? But it's not that. It's that he's confident again and he's playing well again. Exactly.
And he's just playing and consistently. And Josie Altidore in his career, when he had stints of over 15 games of no injury and playing time, it's always successful. The amount of goals that he scored at AK is at Divisi, because he was playing day in, day out. He was always there, target man, there to support and there to create when he needed to be. And it's almost that replicated to a higher level, if you want to say that about his time at Toronto FC. He's injury free now.
Yeah.
He's been
half the season. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why he's hot now, because it's been a few weeks before that he was able to ramp up and have consistent gaming time and able to perform when it's time.
Yeah. Look, he's confident now and he's happy now too. Like, quick little anecdote from training on Thursday. We're all standing up. There's this massive amount of media presence there, of course. There's probably 300 journalists there, and they're all standing against a wall. And Josie's the first off the training pitch. And he sees me. He looks at this massive humanity. We're standing there politely against the wall, like we're lined up ready to go. And he puts his hand and he goes, good game, good game, good game, good game, like that, like he's shaking your hand, and kind of laughs, and people like give him a high five, and he keeps walking down the hall. It's kind of like, that's a small little anecdote, and it's just a little slice, but he's clearly a guy that's comfortable in his skin right now, that's happy, and is just happy to be here, and has a weight lifted off him from behalf.
Doesn't feel the pressure of shortcomings, the pressure of non-results by him. He actually feels embraced, loves. And there's more than 2 types of player. But when you think about player, you're either somebody throwing beep on you, or you're motivated by people telling you they love you.
Yeah,
it's one or the other.
Josie's the latter.
Josie, when he's feeling love.
And look, he is, to get specific to today, and I've been saying this for 2 years, to me, he's the key. If he plays like he did especially in the extra time against Montreal, I think that's the difference maker between what separates Toronto and Seattle today is the Altidore factor out there, particularly if Giovinco is able to distract and give him some space. So he's a key player, and he's been absolutely massive. And as I said, that credit to that one, credit to the changing the attitude and getting board goes to Lewicki. Credit to the smarts is a Bezpachenko, a guy that at times in this market that were, I wouldn't say, there were some people that were souring on him a little bit early on because we're impatient in this city when it comes to that, because we've lost for so long that any sort of suggestion that we might continue to lose will cause people to call for people's heads. That's silly. To MLS's credit, they did not cave to that. I don't think it was ever close. I think that the closest was Vanny last year, but I think, again, to Bezbachenko's credit, to go to MLSE to say, no, we need to keep this guy, we need to stay the course, that has led us to today, and he deserves that credit.
When we talk about the Moneyball aspect, when we talk about the guy who built that roster, the guy who understood the league functions and the intricacies of the league, because he was under all those general manager for so long, he was the guy who was able to come up with a plan. Good to have money, but you have to make sure you spend it at the right place. And Toronto had big failings in that department before, and this time around, he found a way. He found a blueprint that might be used in the next 2-3 years, because it's always a cycle, but it's going to be used to build other championship team if Toronto wins tonight, or even if they don't win in the early 2000s.
Well, they've never really beat,
but they collusion.
Yeah, it's Moneyball, but who perfected Moneyball was the Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox are one of probably the richest,
second richest baseball team.
The Yankees and the Red Sox are the richest sports franchises outside of the Cowboys in North America.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so someone took that idea and that's what eventually led it over the top. The Red Sox have won the World Series 3 times. The A's have not.
So which one are TFC? Are TFC the A's or are TFC the Red Sox?
Well, TFC are, well, they're not the Red Sox yet. They need to, they would Sox
if they win.
They win today.
Speaking of Seattle, so finish the show there. It's a question that you always ask your guests, Duane. What does Seattle need to do to beat Toronto?
They need to get pressure down the flanks. Toronto is going to try and score goals. They're going to play with wingbacks, so I would get Jordan Morris at the wingbacks, trying to put pressure on the wide areas of the pitch to cut in from the outside. Toronto has shown vulnerability there. Hats off to guys like Hagelin to step up and play above their levels. But Hagelin, to me, is your weak spot at the back, so I would be running right at him defensively.
He was exposed before his heroics in that game too, because Dardreau was on him.
Yeah, and
others as well. The second goal of Montreal was on him, but he stepped up and helped. But if it wasn't for his goal, people would be talking about his deficiencies earlier in that game.
Yeah, the other thing I would stress if I were in that Seattle room right now is that Montreal succeeded to a point in terms of their absorbent attack. I think Seattle has to take that concept and push it up a little bit further and kind of combine what New York does to them.
Tighter, like don't concede twice at home in the first leg. Tighter.
Yeah, exactly. Montreal's failing was that they played too deep. They played too loose sometimes. Seattle needs to get a little bit on top of them. And the team that really had Montreal not beaten the Red Bulls, I don't think we're here today. I think the Red Bulls are here today. It's because the Red Bulls had Toronto's number in many ways. And the reason they did is they put a lot of high pressure on Toronto to cut them off early and then do the attacking thing. So they were putting the pressure up from in their own, like from the halfway
stopping
forward.
Transitions, basically.
Yeah. So they're already on top of things before Toronto can get deep and get them pinned back, which is, I think, was Montreal's failing. It's the right idea. It's the right way to beat TFC is on the counter and on the wings. But Montreal sat back a little too deep.
Yeah.
And when they got tired at the end of game 1, at the end of game 2, that's when it
as too deep, you mean in their own damn box? All right, let's not go there again. But that's where they backed into the goalkeeper. That's what happened.
Yeah, especially the Bradley goal. The goal, yes. The second goal in that first leg is what won that tie. And that was it.
Pressure was mounting and mounting. Toronto was taking inch and inch, coming forward. And then ball bounces, you got a guy open, shoots, and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I would do if I was Seattle. High pressure, attack on the wings, cut in from the top of the box and create some havoc going after Hagelin.
And to finish the show, what does Toronto need to do to beat Seattle?
They need to defend a little bit better than they did against Montreal. And by a little bit better, I mean a lot better. If they lose this game, it's because their defense fails them, and their defense has been strong all year. I think Toronto's clearly got the firepower to score, maybe even score a couple goals today. But if they can't tighten the ship up as they have been, kind of what happened. It's funny. TFC switched off halfway. They switched halfway through the season. They said, you know what? We were so successful last year scoring goals, and if we can get on a roll, we can score enough goals to win a championship. It's almost like they decided that the defense was what was going to get them the home playoff dates and get them the advantage of home. And then once they got that and were assured of that, they started to say, we're going to attack again. And once they started to score, that's when they become untouchable. So really it comes down to is to put this as simply as possible. Toronto needs to score today and needs to continue to play that, but they have to be a little tighter because I think Seattle represents the most dangerous opposition they faced in the playoffs so far. They should, as it's the final. You would think that with Ladero there trying to create, and you have Morris playing that Oduro role again. It's kind of similar. So you got Piatti, you got Oduro. They beat them once, but that's how they have to. They're just going to have to defend a little bit better.
Interesting, though, because if we go back to 2015, Duane, Toronto decided to play a way that we're going to score a bunch of goals allowed. They came into 2016 with a revamped defense, with a new defensive attitude that they didn't get the same output in scoring, but they didn't concede as much. Is it going to be an old enemy that comes back and haunt them if they don't win tonight? It's because of the defense.
It might be. What's going to be most telling for me is whether Johnson starts this game. If Johnson starts this game, I think that's going to be an indication that they're planning to play tighter, that they're respecting Seattle and they're trying to play a little tighter, a little closer to their defensive first philosophy for the half of the year. If Johnson doesn't start this game, Osorio starts this game, then I think they're going to try and win 3-1 or 4-2 or something. And they may believe they could do that. And you know what? They do have the firepower that if they play this game 10 times, they probably do win the game like that a couple times. So we'll see. But it's going to be a fascinating affair, and I really can't believe it's 12 hours.
It's 8 hours.
8 hours.
8 hours to game time.
Day.
It's game day. And on that note, we will say goodbye for now. Stay tuned to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network, for videos and coverage to the lead up of the game tonight. And until later tonight for a special edition of Soccer Today, a post-game edition of Soccer Today with reactions from the winning team and maybe some from the losing team. Until then, have a great soccer. And Duane, have fun. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.